When they start branding Traore as a criminal because he's stealing the gold of his people of Burkina Faso to protect himself, then slowly they're achieving two things: building a narrative that this government is illegitimate, but also, and more sinister, more lethal, what they're also doing is to begin to lay the groundwork of taking action. But also another trick that they're now using in this divide and rule is by using black people. We embrace Michael Langley as a son of Africa. We embrace Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party in the UK, as a daughter of Africa. But we are telling them that we must now stop allowing these people to use the black man and the black woman to do their dirty work. For example, in the case of General Michael Langley, he is the leader of the US Africa Command. And as the leader of the US Africa Command, he had a chance to renegotiate America's relationship with Africa militarily, but it is impossible because the American systems cannot allow that. These people like controlling Africa through narratives. And what they do with people like Ibrahim Traore and previously somebody like Magufuli or even Gaddafi before him, when they say that you're in power illegitimately, when they create a narrative that then shows that you're in power illegitimately, with time, it starts to take hold. Revolution is not just about slogans and rhetoric, but it is literally about making the lives of people better.
Good.
So when these economies become stronger, because they are backed by Burkina Faso's gold, then they'll be in for a rude shock. Burkina Faso is in the process of setting up a national gold reserve. Where there'll be actual gold, not just on paper, but a national gold reserve, and that gold will back their currency.
Do you think African presidents are jealous of Traore, the support he's getting, the love he's getting, the lessons people are picking from him? Is this a threat? Are they intimidated by this son of Africa?
In a time when Africa should be rallying behind one of its boldest sons, Captain Ibrahim Traore, silence from his peers and the African Union that was supposed to be protecting him has become the loudest sound. Captain Ibrahim Traore, the young leader of Burkina Faso, stands at the front line of a new African awakening, rejecting foreign domination, reclaiming national resources, and calling for true sovereignty. Yet, as assassination attempts loom over him and protesters rise in his defense across cities from New York to Monrovia, the African Union and many African heads of state have chosen a shameful path: indifference. From the president of Algeria to the president of South Africa, all these head of states, including the president of the African Union, João Lorenzo, have shamefully remained silent. In a time like this, where African presidents are supposed to be lending their voices and standing up against Western dominance and imperialism, they have decided to awfully remain silent, pretending as if they don't know and see what is happening in Burkina Faso. Traore's struggle is no ordinary political battle. It is a challenge to the deep-rooted structures that have kept Africa dependent and fractured for decades. By expelling foreign troops and breaking away from old financial chains, he has become a symbol of resistance for millions of young Africans. But for the African political elite, his revolution is dangerous. Not because it threatens Africa, but because it threatens them. Leaders who have long balanced loyalty to external powers with fragile domestic rule fear that Traore's example might inspire their own citizens to rise. The African Union, an institution that once dreamed of unity and liberation, has remained disturbingly mute. As reports of assassination plots swirl, and as Traore faces increasing external pressure, African Union statements have been absent, their halls echoing with a silence that feels like complicity. Where is the solidarity that the African Charter promises? Where is the defense of an African leader facing imperial backlash? Their refusal to act exposes the uncomfortable reality. Too many African leaders are entangled in systems that profit from the old colonial order. To stand with Traore would mean standing against the very forces that prop up their regimes. Meanwhile, as ordinary Africans march in protest, risking arrests and violence, from Liberia to Senegal, their voices are met not with support, but with repression. The betrayal is not just from the West, it is from within Africa itself. Presidents who should champion Pan-Africanism are watching in silence, protecting their positions, while the spirit of real liberation is under attack. Captain Traore's bold defiance against foreign domination has sparked protests and movements far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. But in Liberia, this rising tide has met with repression. Reports of protesters supporting Traore being arrested in Monrovia send a chilling message. The struggle for African sovereignty is not just about resisting foreign powers. It is also about confronting internal forces that fear change, and most of these internal forces are African leaders who are puppets to the West. The arrests in Liberia reveal a deeper truth. Traore's message: reject neocolonialism, reclaim Africa's wealth, and stand proudly independent, threatens not just the old empires in Paris and Washington, but also African elites who benefit from the status quo. By silencing protesters, some governments who are puppets to the colonialist aim to suppress a movement that could destabilize their own cozy arrangements with foreign powers. But every arrest risks doing the opposite, fueling anger, deepening solidarity among African youth, and turning local protests into a pan-African cause. These crackdowns are a test for the movement. Will it retreat in fear, or will it grow stronger under pressure? If history is any guide, repression often sharpens resistance. The arrests in Liberia may well become a rallying cry, not a defeat. Why African presidents and the African Union have chosen silence. As Captain Traore's movement grows and faces threats, including assassination attempts and coordinated smear campaigns, one striking fact remains: Africa's own presidents have largely chosen silence. This quiet betrayal reveals deep fears and uncomfortable truths about the political reality of the continent. Firstly, many African heads of state see Traore not as an ally, but as a threat. His rise to power through a military coup challenges the model of Western-backed, election-based governance that many African leaders rely on for legitimacy. By showing that popular support and anti-imperialist rhetoric can topple governments, Traore sets a dangerous example for presidents clinging to power. They fear that if they endorse him, they might inspire similar uprisings in their own countries, led by frustrated youth who see Traore as proof that change is possible. Secondly, these leaders are deeply entangled with foreign powers. France, the United States, and European institutions still wield enormous influence through aid, military cooperation, and economic deals. Supporting Traore openly would mean directly opposing the very powers that sustain their regimes. It risks sanctions, aid cuts, and diplomatic isolation, consequences that most African governments are unwilling to face. Their silence is a strategic calculation: preserve their own political survival, even if it means abandoning a fellow African leader under attack. Thirdly, the African Union and regional bodies like ECOWAS have positioned themselves as defenders of constitutional order, often condemning coups while ignoring the underlying causes of instability: corruption, poverty, and neocolonial exploitation. By sticking to this formal position, they avoid the messy reality that Traore's revolution represents: a grassroots demand for real sovereignty that doesn't fit neatly into their frameworks. Their silence is not just fear, it is institutional self-preservation. Yet, this silence comes at a cost. As African presidents turn their backs on Traore, they also risk alienating their own populations, who are increasingly disillusioned with the old order. On social media, in the streets, and in the hearts of Africa's youth, Traore's defiance resonates far more deeply than the polished speeches of aging leaders. The gap between the people and their governments is growing, and the refusal to stand with Traore only widens it. In the end, African leaders have chosen the comfort of their foreign alliances and fragile positions over the courage to support a new vision for the continent. But history has shown that silence in the face of revolution does not stop its march. It only delays the inevitable. As Traore stands firm, the question is not whether Africa's presidents will continue their silence, but for how long before their people demand they speak up or step aside. The global effects of Ibrahim Traore's revolution. Captain Ibrahim Traore's rise in Burkina Faso is no longer just a national event. It has become a wave shaking power structures across Africa and unsettling capitals around the world. What began as a military coup in 2022 has transformed into a revolutionary movement challenging the very roots of neocolonial control, and its effects are now being felt far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. First and foremost, Traore's bold rejection of foreign military presence has emboldened a new alliance in the Sahel. His government, alongside the juntas in Mali and Niger, has formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a pact committed to self-defense and regional cooperation without dependence on Western forces. This alliance is shifting the balance of power in West Africa, undermining the influence of long-dominant actors like France and the United States. Paris, in particular, has seen its military presence and political leverage in the region collapse at a speed that was unthinkable just a few years ago. Beyond West Africa, Traore's rhetoric and actions are inspiring youth movements and activists across the continent. His message, that Africa's resources must benefit Africans, not foreign corporations, resonates in countries from the Democratic Republic of Congo to South Africa. Protesters in Liberia, Senegal, and even in the African diaspora in Europe have rallied in support of his anti-imperialist stance. In this way, Traore has become a symbol of resistance, reigniting Pan-African dreams of unity and self-determination that had faded since the days of leaders like Thomas Sankara and Kwame Nkrumah. On the global stage, Traore's revolution is accelerating a realignment. As Burkina Faso and its allies pivot away from Western partnerships, they are turning towards Russia, China, and other non-Western powers. This has raised alarm in Washington, Paris, and Brussels, who fear losing strategic footholds in Africa's resource-rich Sahel region. Burkina Faso's closer ties with Moscow, including reports of military cooperation and potential mining deals, mark a clear shift in global geopolitics. The West sees this as not just a regional setback, but part of a broader challenge to its global dominance. At the same time, Traore's movement is influencing debates about economic independence. His government's push to nationalize resources, control gold revenues, and reject the CFA franc currency system has sparked discussions in other African nations about breaking free from colonial-era financial structures. This threatens institutions like the West African Economic and Monetary Union, which anchors much of the region to French financial systems. But perhaps the most profound effect is psychological. Traore's defiance has shattered the long-standing myth that African countries must submit to foreign powers to survive. His stance has injected a new sense of pride, confidence, and possibility among Africans worldwide. Whether one sees him as a hero or a disruptor, there is no denying. Ibrahim Traore's movement is sending shockwaves through Africa and the world, challenging old empires and awakening new forces that are still gathering strength.